You're listening to Physician Non-Clinical Careers, episode number 336. Add the SWOT analysis to your growing skill stack. Today's show was recorded a couple of years ago when I presented to a group of physicians interested in learning management skills to add to their talent stack. As I've discussed in the past, clinicians interested in moving into an executive position should learn and apply new business management skills that will be useful when taking on medical director, vice president, or chief medical officer roles. Many of these skills are very easy to learn and do not require attending formal business classes or obtaining an advanced business degree. One of those tools to learn is the SWOT analysis. Now, SWOT is an acronym that describes features of a new service, process, or product that is being considered. The components of SWOT are the following. S stands for strengths of the organization or team planning a new project. W stands for its weaknesses. O stands for opportunities. And T stands for threats. Learning to participate actively and lead a SWOT analysis is a very valuable skill that can be highlighted on your resume and during a job interview. However, before we get to that, let's hear from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by the Physician Executive MBA program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville's Haslam College of Business. In less than one calendar year, this program will equip you with valuable business acumen and leadership development not found in the traditional medical school curriculum. Are you ready to join the longest running physician-only MBA program in the country and a network of nearly 1,000 PEMBA graduates? Contact Dr. Kate Axley's office at 865-974-6526 or go to nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. All right, let's get to the presentation today. The audio on this presentation did break up a couple of times during today's lecture, so to speak. However, I think there's still value in learning this important management tool, so I cleaned it up as best I can. And why don't we just jump right into today's replay of a presentation I did a couple of years ago. It's a good idea if you're thinking about moving into some other area that you might consider obtaining new skills that you can stack on your existing skills, and that makes you more attractive to certain types of jobs. And a lot of those skills really and a lot of that knowledge is basically business skills and information. In fact, I was thinking about this earlier, and much of what I'm going to talk about today, the types of skills that you might want to accrue, well, we talked about last time. You're pretty much going to find those if you happen to be a member of the American Association for Physician Leadership, because that's the American Association for Physician Leadership, including like a leader in an executive position. So you're going to need to know all of those business skills like negotiating and contracting and health law and management principles, HR principles, leadership principles, and so on and so forth. Well, today I want to give you a little mini MBA course in 15 minutes. And so this is a session in which we are going to talk about SWOT analysis. What is a SWOT analysis? Now, I remember probably sitting in a room one day, I think it was shortly after I became VP for Medical Affairs. So I was in the C-suite and I was listening to these conversations. I was acclimating to this new job. And I heard somebody talk about, well, we've got to do our budgeting at the end of the year here, and we're going to be setting some management goals, and so we need to do a SWOT analysis, and then we can be prepared to move forward on that. I'm thinking, SWOT analysis, that sounds pretty, is that like a SWAT team or something? But for those that know what it is, you're kind of chuckling because the SWOT analysis sounds like some really great tool, but it's been around forever. And the SWOT just simply comes from the acronym of what you're doing when you're doing a SWOT analysis, and that is for whatever sort of problem you're looking at, you're trying to solve, and maybe develop a set of goals or make a decision about. You're just going to look at these factors, which have been shown to be important in decision making about whether to proceed with something like this or not, or choose from among a multitude of options. We can do 10, we got 10 different things we want to do. How do we figure out which of those 10 are the highest priorities? Well, you could do a SWOT analysis. So there's lots of ways that a SWOT analysis is used. Now, I will mention this, that you may want to read about this, and actually even Wikipedia does a pretty good job describing this, but you can look it up on Google. You can find almost any kind of business management book will have it. It's, I'm sure, taught in schools that provide MBAs and MMMs and MHAs and things like that. But the SWOT simply refers to the S is strengths, the W is weaknesses, the O is opportunities, and the T is threats. And so you take whatever it is that you're dealing with and you bring it through that process. So I'll tell you, when we use this frequently, I would use it with my managers, and sometimes the senior team would use it to develop it's maybe an hour or two session at our strategic planning meetings. Now, we had bi-weekly or weekly strategic planning meetings, so that we wouldn't do a SWOT analysis every time at that, although we could do it at a particular meeting. But if we did an annual, I guess you would call it more of a management goal meeting, because the old days we did strategic initiatives that would be looking out 3 to 5 years, and there's still some times where that's important to do. But generally, we're doing year by year, and that short-term strategic analysis and plan became really the management plan, which meant that every line goals that the superior had decided we were going to do for that year coming up. We usually did this towards the end of the year, although not quite at the end, because we wanted to know what these initiatives would be before we actually set the budget, because many, if not budgetary $20 commitment, as opposed to saying, well, I think we're going to extend our hours on weekends. You could do that without necessarily a huge budgetary impact, and in that case the revenues would offset the expenses anyway, but still, even there, you might want to do that. So I've written about in the past an example of what this might look like. So let's say, I'll just give you an example and we'll walk through it. So let's say that we were in a group, either a private group or part of a hospital, medical group, and we decided that that we were going to do a SWOT analysis to decide whether we should proceed with an expansion into a new primary care or urgent care service in a new area that we hadn't been in before. Okay, so we're like, okay, we're in a hospital. We have a competitor hospital basically within walking distance. There are some other competitors out further, but basically we have that to contend with. And then we have to consider all the factors that might go into, whether we can and should do this. What do we have the budget for it? Are we growing? Do we want to grow? Do we have staff for it, and so forth? So let's see what the SWOT analysis might look like. And this is just a partial SWOT analysis, but we're looking at this. And so let's start. Let's talk about and brainstorm about our strengths. Okay, well, at the time, we were definitely the biggest hospital of the two and the most successful, I would say, in the community. We had a much bigger bottom line. We had a $300 or $400 million net revenues, and the other one maybe had a third of that. We had an employed base of physicians. We were fairly successful at recruiting physicians. We had, a very healthy bottom line for the last 5 years. We were making money, unlike other hospitals in the state of Illinois, many were losing money. And what are the other strengths? We had a great brand recognition. We had gone through some marketing consultations in previous years, so we had some pretty tight branding and marketing. We had good logos, and they had been consistent color palette and that sort of thing. Like I said, the finances were strong. And then the other thing is, do we have physicians interested in this? And we did have those inside the medical group, the primary care doctors, already interested in finding new locations to do this. And if we looked at who was in our team right now, the team that was running the group, had a lot of depth, and so we could take on, we felt, in that situation pretty readily, expanding, into a new territory. Now, we would also have to decide things like, are we going to build, or are we going to, lease some space? How much do we want to commit to this from a budgetary standpoint? Is it going to be enough? But so far so good. Now, weaknesses. At the time, we were looking at adding an urgent care clinic. Basically, we had no experience in urgent care. We were not doing any urgent care. There were some urgent cares on the periphery of our service area. They were all either independent, freestanding individual urgent cares or large sort of regional groups that were expanding. And it's a little different competing, let's say, with an urgent care that's run by an entrepreneur as opposed to an urgent care run by a hospital, which typically loses money, but they make it up on the referrals and that kind of thing. So no expertise in that. We had already several pretty pressing strategic initiatives. I don't remember exactly, but let's say that we were starting an open heart program, and we were in the process of recruiting a new radiology group, and we were still finishing up the addition of a new wing to the hospital. So those are weaknesses because there's a lack of depth in terms of the ability to manage something at maybe a higher level, management, directors, and VPs, because we had these other big projects going on, and because we didn't have the experience. And the other thing is that we were really having trouble at that time recruiting staff fast enough to maintain, keep up with our growth. So if we were already having that, that was a weakness, because if we add another project that's going to bring on 20 staff, then that's opportunities. Well, the area we were looking to go in didn't have urgent care. In fact, the general area around us didn't have urgent care. We were looking at ways to prepare for, value-based contracting, or, prepaid plans, or, keeping costs down, basically, which means keeping people out of the emergency room, which is basically what primary care and urgent care does. If you have enough capacity, shunt those people. So that's one opportunity we had never pursued before. It just so happened there was rental space available at several locations in the town in which we were looking to put the urgent care. And we had heard that the community definitely wanted more physicians, and we probably should have done a little more digging on that, what type of physicians, but basically they just wanted physicians because there was a lack of. This place is a good 30-minute drive outside of the main area where our hospital was located, and it was pretty rural, but still had some population density there. Now, the threats, that's T. The threats for the SWOT analysis could be things like, again, you just look at all those areas: finance, growth, marketing, branding, reputation, quality, staffing and HR issues, all those things. And now you look at the threats. Mostly we're looking at threats that are coming from outside, but one threat is that, there was a very large uninsured population, so sometimes that could be tricky in terms of how to set it up and how to make sure that you can serve the needs but not lose a lot of money in the process. The second threat was that, we had heard there were both competitors external to our market looking to expand potentially, and then also at the other hospital, and in a group of primary care physicians thinking of doing it themselves. They were probably going to start it on their own offices and expand maybe into this other thing. So we need to be aware about that. The other threat, I guess, that we came up with at that time was the fact that, our medical staff might not like this idea of us recruiting more and more physicians, because a lot of the medical staff at that time were still private medical staff that were not employed, and so they would feel threatened by us, and they could do things that would make it difficult. They could say, okay, we're taking all our business to the other hospital because they're not hiring physicians as much as you are to compete with us. So those are the kind of examples of some of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, you do that for 5 or 6 or 7 different projects that you're thinking about, and then by balancing those out and really get into the financial piece, as you'll need like a pro forma, or at least a thumbnail sketch of what the costs of the different projects are, and then what's the return. On a clinic or something, that might take 2 or 3 or 4 years to really break even. If you add a new service line that's really a big demand and be successful in 3 or 4 months, then you're going to get the return on investment more quickly. So what we would do then, from taking that SWOT analysis, we would take that to the next step of goal setting, so that this is how we would translate it. So we would use language like this: for my department, how can we utilize our strengths in X to take advantage of the opportunity to Y? So that's the strengths, the S and the O. How can we utilize our strengths in this, A, to minimize the threat coming from B? Or how can we take advantage of the opportunity to Z, minimize our weaknesses in V? So let me just give you some examples. So this is how we would phrase things if we're going to put some of these together. Well, let me see if I have my notes here. Here we are. So I would say, okay, following the what I just mentioned, I'd say for my department, so I had, well, this would be a manager talking. I had usually between 4 and 8 departments reporting to me. But for my department, how can we utilize our financial strength and strong interest by the medical group to staff an urgent care clinic to take advantage of the opportunity of less? Again, how can we utilize our strong management team, so that was one of our strengths, to minimize the threat of the large percentage of uninsured in the market? So somehow take care of the uninsured. We got a good team. We need to leverage them. Another example: how can we take advantage of community support to minimize our weakness, which is difficulty in recruiting support staff? So how do we get the community to help support us getting staff in? And there are big ways to do that. I mean, you can get certain educational organizations to, foot the bill to teach assistant or senior community that. I guess that's where I'm going to end it. I'm getting, past my usual 15 minutes. But this is something that you, like I said, you can learn about in pretty much anywhere, any business book. You can actually do some business courses at the APL that will talk about this. But for a quick and dirty review and definition of all the terms, then I would just say go to Wikipedia and look up SWOT analysis, SWOT, all caps, analysis. And hey, if you're in whatever job you're in, and you're being asked to participate in a planning session or to provide feedback, because I've done this. I was on the board. I am on the board of a hospice, and we were doing a strategic plan one year. And I said, hey, if you want me to take the team through a SWOT analysis, we'll go through the whole thing, all these different areas for where the hospice is in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we used it for the management team to develop their goals for the following year. And since I had done several SWOT analysis, and I thought, well, let's have him lead this one, and then we can get someone next time to lead it for the rest of the team. All right, that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and this should be posted soon if you missed part of it. And I will see you next week. Thank you for listening and watching. I hope today's presentation gave you some understanding of what a SWOT analysis is and how it is used in planning a new initiative. Even if you're still working clinically, if you're thinking about adding a new service or product, it makes sense to carve out an hour or two to do a SWOT analysis with your team to help identify and overcome threats and weaknesses and take advantage of strengths and opportunities. I added links to several blog posts and podcast episodes with more information related to this topic and a transcript in the show notes. Those can be found at nonclinicalphysicians.com/SWOT-analysis. SWOT is spelled SWOT. So that's nonclinicalphysicians.com/SWOT-analysis. By the way, did you know that you too can sponsor the Physician Non-Clinical Careers podcast? As a sponsor, you'll reach thousands of physicians with each episode to sell your products and services or build your following. Your message will be heard on the podcast and seen on our website, in our newsletter, and in social media posts. You can learn more about that by going to nonclinicalphysicians.com/sponsorships. Remember that this podcast is made possible by the support of the University of Tennessee Physician Executive MBA program. You can learn more about that at nonclinicalphysicians.com/physician MBA. Sometimes I use affiliate links when I'm selling something. You'll find those in the show notes sometimes. And it means I receive a payment from the seller if you purchase the affiliate item using my link. Usually I have highlighted when there is an affiliate link in the show notes. I remind you that my opinion expressed here is mine alone today. And while the information provided on the podcast is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge, there's no guarantee that using the methods discussed will lead to success in your career, life, or business. So always consult an attorney, accountant, or career strategist before making any major decision about your career. That's all for today. Hope to see you here next Tuesday on the next episode of Physician Non-Clinical Careers. Bye now.